Uncle Peter's house. My name is Peter. For 35 years, I've been running this small watch repair shop in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Cleveland. Life passed by in moments. Wake up every morning, open the shop under the familiar gray Ohio sky, cook a simple meal in my modest apartment above the storefront, work until my back ached, and at night, fall asleep watching whatever game was on TV. That was my routine. Yet within that routine, there was a warmth. Her name was Rose. Rose wasn't just my wife. She was the steady rhythm to my ticking clock, the clean kerosene scent on my tools, the quiet country music humming from the kitchen radio that made the silence of our small apartment feel like home. She passed away 3 months ago, a sudden cardiac arrest. One day she was there, making coffee a little too weak for my taste, and the next, just an empty space on her side of our bed, a worn-out flannel shirt still hanging on the back of her favorite recliner. The grief was a heavy, silent weight, like a lead case for a broken clock. The shop felt cavernous without her popping her head in at noon with a sandwich from the deli. The apartment echoed with the absence of her laughter. I'd find myself talking to her photo on the mantelpiece, asking if she'd paid the electric bill, only to be met with the hollow quiet of my own voice.
Then, one sleety Thursday afternoon, a woman from the county's child services, Miss Walker, walked into my shop, her coat dusted with melting snow. She wasn't holding a broken watch. She was holding the hand of a small, solemn-looking boy. He was about 7, with big, wary blue eyes that held a story I didn't yet know. His name was Harry. "Peter," Miss Walker said, her voice gentle but official. "This is Harry. His mother, she was your wife's second cousin, I believe, from out in Pennsylvania? There's been a tragic accident. There's no immediate family able to take him. He's been with a foster family, but it's short-term. He needs a stable place, permanently." I looked at the boy. He wasn't looking at the rows of wristwatches under the glass counter. He was staring at my hands, my old, grease-stained, steady hands as they carefully pried open the case of a vintage Rolex. There was an intensity in his gaze, a deep curiosity that cut through his shyness and reminded me of the way Rose would examine the intricate pattern on a quilt she was mending. "He can stay for the weekend," I heard myself say, the words surprising me as much as they seemed to surprise Miss Walker. Just until we figure this out, get to know each other." That weekend stretched into the next week. Harry arrived with a small, faded duffel bag. He didn't cry, he barely spoke. He just existed in my space, a quiet, watchful presence following me from the cluttered living room to the galley kitchen to the workshop downstairs. I set up an old stool for him near my workbench. He'd sit there for hours, his eyes tracking the tiny screws, the gentle blasts of compressed air from my blower, the precise application of oil from the needle-tipped bottles. One day, I was struggling with a particularly finicky Elgin pocket watch from the 1920s. The hairspring was a nightmare, coiling and uncoiling with a mind of its own under my loupe. My old eyes were watering, and my fingers, usually so reliable, fumbled. "Mr. Peter." I nearly jumped. It was the first full sentence Harry had spoken to me. He pointed a small, clean finger, not at the tangled hairspring, but at the balance wheel sitting off to the side on my green felt mat. "That part looks lonely. It's not with its friend." I stared, then looked down. The balance wheel was isolated, separated from the hairspring that gave it purpose. They were a pair, a partnership. One couldn't keep time without the other. A simple, profound observation from a child's honest perspective. A feeling, warm and unexpected, thawed a little of the cold grief inside me. I could almost hear Rose's soft Midwestern accent in my ear. "See, Pete? Even the oldest, most stubborn gears need the right partner to find their beat." That night, over meatloaf and mashed potatoes from the diner down the street, I made a call to Miss Walker that felt less like a choice and more like winding a mainspring that had finally been found.
Miss Walker, it's Peter. About Harry. I'd like to start the process, to make it official, for him to stay. A slow, deep breath on the other end. Are you sure, Peter? It's a big commitment at your age. I'm sure, I said, looking at Harry, who was carefully arranging his green beans into a neat row on his plate. We're figuring it out. So, it began. My workshop was no longer just my solitary refuge. It became a classroom. I started with the big old practice movements, non-running watches from the junk drawer. I showed him how to hold a screwdriver without stripping a head, how to identify the gear train, the escapement, the winding stem. His small hands were surprisingly calm and deliberate. He was a natural observer, learning more from silence and watching than from my explanations. He started coming to the shop with me every day after school. Regulars would smile at the sight of the gruff old watchmaker and his tiny, serious shadow. Old Mr. Henderson, who came in every Friday to browse, started bringing 2 lollipops instead of 1. "For my 2 favorite timekeepers," he'd chuckle. The quiet in the apartment above the shop changed its tune. It was no longer the empty silence of loss, but a comfortable quiet, filled with the sounds of a new shared life, the click of checkers on a board in the evening, the crackle of bacon in the morning, the soft sound of him reading a school book aloud, stumbling over the bigger words. One Saturday, a young man came in, looking anxious. He placed a beautiful old Patek Philippe dress watch on the counter. "It was my great-grandfather's," he said. "It hasn't run in decades. Money's no object. I'd love to hear it tick again." It was a masterpiece and a mess. For 3 days I labored over it. Harry, a constant silent presence on his stool. On the 4th day, I was stuck. A tiny, essential cap jewel was shattered. I didn't have a spare, and sourcing one would take weeks. I leaned back in my creaky chair, feeling a familiar wave of frustration and defeat. I felt a gentle tug on my work apron. Harry was standing there, holding out his closed fist. He opened it. On his palm lay a single, perfect, minuscule glass bead from an old Christmas ornament of roses I'd found in a storage box. "Would this be its friend?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I looked from the clear bead to the empty setting to the boy's hopeful, intelligent eyes. It was pure, simple ingenuity, a spark of Rose's creative spirit alive in this quiet child. My throat felt tight. "You know what, kiddo?" I said, my voice rougher than usual. "I think it just might be." Carefully, with a steadiness that came from both a lifetime of practice and a new kind of purpose, I fitted the bead. I reassembled the watch. I gave it a gentle wind. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The sound filled the workshop, clear and steady. The young man's face, when he came to collect it, was a picture of joy. But the greater victory wasn't on the counter. It was on the small stool beside me, where a little boy, for the first time since he'd arrived, gave a small, slow, genuine smile that didn't fade when he saw me looking. My house, my shop, my life, they weren't empty anymore. They were just recalibrated, wound with a new and different kind of love. And for the first time in 3 months, the future didn't feel like a stopped clock. It felt like it was just beginning to keep perfect time.